Hi, it's Dwyer. It is NFL Draft Day, day one, right? April 24th, 2025. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just make a couple of points here about the NFL draft so we can put it in perspective, right? I know there's a crowd out there, and they have ammunition this year, who want you to believe that these picks, notably these first round quarterback picks, matter greatly. They just saw a rookie, Jaden Daniels, not only make the Pro Bowl, but make the NFC Championship game. Who knocked him out? A team he beat earlier in the season. The team that would go on to win the Super Bowl over Pat Mahomes. And that's the Philadelphia Eagles. So I know there are people looking at Daniels' team, the Washington Commanders, and they're thinking, that's what we can do this year. Right? We can find our quarterback and maybe our quarterback, if we get lucky, can make the Pro Bowl, can win in the playoffs, can beat the 1 seed, the Detroit Lions in Detroit, and then can get us to the conference championship game. Folks, I'm here to say that that's highly unlikely. The draft is a crapshoot. Let's remember, too, that Jaden Daniels wasn't even the first quarterback taken in last year's draft. Today we can look back and we can, make arguments that Warren Moon wasn't drafted in the late 70s because at the time black quarterbacks were devalued. The evaluation system was flawed. We'll overlook the fact that Warren Moon made it to the Rose Bowl, right? In college, and we recognize that certain biases, certain misperceptions in the talent evaluation process distorted the draft order. Folks, today we have no proof, none, that our talent evaluation skills are perfect. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to name 3 names, and I just want you to guess where they were drafted, right? We'll start at quarterback. I'm just going to pick 3 quarterbacks who I think are among the very best to ever play the position. Johnny Unitas, multiple NFL championships. Joe Montana, 4 Super Bowl rings. Tom Brady, so many Super Bowl victories, I'm not even sure what the actual number is, even though I lived through the era. Right? Let's say it's at least 5. Folks, of those 3 guys, name the guy picked in the first round. Right? You and I know the answer is none of them. Name the guy picked in the second round. You and I know the answer's none of them. Only one of these guys got picked in the first 5 rounds, and that's Montana in the 3rd round. Right? Understand, too, Johnny Unitas isn't drafted by the Colts. He's actually drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just understand, he gets released after his rookie training camp. In other words, not only did he slip in the draft, but then when he actually showed up to play, the team that drafted him thought he wasn't good enough. Right, folks? That's the state of talent evaluation. Right, sure, sometimes they get it right. Sometimes a Peyton Manning is drafted first in the draft. Right? What I want people to do is to go back and realize that there are 2 Peyton Mannings. Look at Peyton's interceptions his first year. Folks, DBs were feasting on him. Right? The Peyton Manning we know today, the good judgment, the Omaha at the line of scrimmage, reading the defense, right? That Peyton Manning didn't exist his rookie year. Right? So I need for folks to realize that whatever happened last year, that's an outlier. Right? Jaden Daniels, that's an aberration. That just doesn't happen. Look at Troy Aikman's first year. Right? I'm picking on Manning and Aikman because they're Hall of Famers. Because I'm picking two great quarterbacks and just pointing out that they got drafted first in their drafts and then they went out and struggled. Right? At one point, Jimmy Johnson bought in, I believe it was Steve Walsh, to compete against Troy Aikman. So, as we watch the draft, and don't get me wrong, there'll be guys like me at your local bar. Right? I'll go to the bar really for the party. Not because I'm sitting there thinking, oh, if they pick this guy, they're going to the Super Bowl. Or even the NFC Championship game. Right? I'm not going to be there thinking, oh my goodness, the future of the team hangs on this next pick. Right? Understand too, you can have a great player. A great player, Peyton Manning. And then the guy comes out, and at the end of his rookie year, at least half of the crowd is going to wonder whether the guy can play in the league. Let me tell you, out here, California, Northern California, Bill Walsh was insane. Seriously, one of the best coaches, one of the best talent evaluators I know of. Now, Walsh had a lot of capital by the middle of the 1980s because, of course, with Joe Montana, they had won a Super Bowl. Right? The team was dead in the water. Walsh comes along. His offense was so new, they didn't even have a name for it. Right? These days, we call it the West Coast offense. Understand, back then, you were watching it and you thought, what the hell are they doing? Right? Bill Walsh was an innovator. He was able to do things by the mid-'80s that other coaches couldn't dream of doing. So he drafted a wide receiver out of a college that isn't considered a football powerhouse, Mississippi Valley State. And understand that wide receiver then proceeded to drop several passes. I know it's stunning to believe now, but he dropped several passes. And the Bay Area press, which isn't as aggressive as the New York City press, for example, or the Chicago Tribune, or the Philly Inquirer, right? The Bay Area press got on Walsh and got on this young guy who was dropping balls, right? The idea was, is this guy from Mississippi Valley State even ready to play NFL football? How could we blow a first-round pick on this guy? And, of course, the guy then became Jerry Rice. Right? As you can imagine, if you're in a team scouting department and you're talking about a wide receiver prospect, and someone says, how's his hands? And the answer is, he has hands like Jerry Rice. You understand you're talking about some of the best hands ever at the position. Right? I want folks to go back and look at how many balls Jerry Rice dropped his rookie year. Right? Understanding that Rice only started 4 games his rookie year. Right? So let me just talk about the league today. Right? The past is prologue. Let's talk about the league today. And let's look at these quarterbacks. Because I know it's going to be, they've broken out the draft. It's going to be a tragedy if some of these guys slip out of the first round. Right? 2-time MVP, Lamar Jackson, I believe he's the last pick of the first round, barely makes the first round. Right? Understand, Aaron Rodgers, the secret to Rodgers, and he was great at Berkeley. He was great, is the haircut. and the griff, right? The facial hair. I'm not making this up. As he sat in the room that they put people expected to go in the first round in, right? With all due respect to Alex Smith was never the quarterback Aaron Rodgers was, even in college. Alex Smith went first in the draft. The team drafting him were the San Francisco 49ers. The offensive coordinator for that team was Mike McCarthy, who would later end up coaching Aaron Rodgers. Right? Rodgers slips in the draft. This is a 4-time MVP, folks. He's more than 20 picks after a guy at his position. Right? So we don't know what we don't know. I think Rodgers' demeanor, he's viewed as strange today. Right? I think his demeanor, his facial hair, the way he combed his hair with gel, I think people looked at him and they thought, weirdo. We don't care what his talent is. Right? So just understand, some guys are going to slip for whatever reason. Let's continue talking about Aaron Rodgers for a moment here. This draft is really about Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers hasn't formally signed the contract with Pittsburgh yet. I'm concerned because I have Pittsburgh on a greater than 60-1 bet right now. Right? Got the odds. There was uncertainty about Pittsburgh's quarterback situation. Right? Would it be Justin Fields? Would it be Russell Wilson? Now suddenly, both of those guys are on other teams. Right? Ironically, same city, New York City. Right? They're on other teams. And of course, Aaron Rodgers has stepped in. And they've gotten Metcalf now at wide receiver. Metcalf, Pickens, Rodgers, oh my. But Rodgers hasn't signed the deal. You wonder what Pittsburgh's going to do in this draft. That's the real story of the draft. Right? The other thing, too, is there's another team out there. They've been dismantling. They have a quarterback who, of course, made an NFC Championship game, then a different year, makes it to the Super Bowl, leaves the field in overtime with the lead. He's unsigned, and curiously, the Niners haven't signed him to a new contract. Right? He's in camp now. You also have another odd situation. Right? And all of this is going to be sorted out in part in the draft. Right? Now, I don't know about you, but I looked at Michigan Wolverine football. And I didn't think their quarterback was all that. But Jim Harbaugh did, the head coach. Now this quarterback is slated to be the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, to the point where the Vikings let Sam Darnold leave. Right? I'm guessing Aaron Rodgers is losing sleep at night thinking about throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson. Right? Think about it too. Aaron Rodgers came up in that division, didn't he? With the Green Bay Packers. Right? Rodgers, of course, loves playing against the Bears. If he were to end up with the Vikings, right, that would give him a chance to stay in that division, and you now have a, Detroit Lion renaissance. Right? A lot's going on there. You wonder if Minnesota's situation is somehow impacting whether Rodgers signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me say this too. I've learned over the years that you really can't tell how focused and how good an athlete is when he's straight out of college and hasn't figured out the social game. Right, years ago, you had a guy who wouldn't even look at the camera. He would wear gold chains, right? This was the young kid. He was highly thought of. He was doing extremely well. But it was jarring because the guy in interviews would talk about his teammates as my supporting cast. Now, today, that would be ridiculous to hear from Wemby, right? A guy who was runner up to Defensive Player of the Year, a guy who, is putting up all star numbers. If you heard Wemby in the NBA talk about my supporting cast, you would think, wow, Wemby really isn't skilled at this stage of his career in public relations. Well, neither was Michael Jordan, right? And you saw him and the pieces didn't fit together, right? Jordan's looking away and stuff like that. Rival players didn't like him. You had an all-star game, and I know this is all rumor and stuff like that, but you have an all-star game where players on his team decided not to pass him the ball. Right? Think about that. Well, I look at Shedeur Sanders, and let me just say, you have a football guru who I respect deeply. I like this guy's work. Look him up. His name's Emory Hunt. And he believes that Shedeur Sanders, who's never had a great offensive line in college, he believes Shedeur Sanders is the most prepared pro-style quarterback since Andrew Luck. Right now, I understand. You look at Shedeur, he's wearing a baseball cap. Right? You would think the guy would show up for interviews looking as crisp as possible. No, Shedeur's showing up. He has his hat at the side. His body language isn't the best. He doesn't come across as corporate. Right? Now, the question is, how image conscious are these teams going to be? Let me say this about Shedeur Sanders. I've seen him play. The guy looks awfully good to me. I looked at his pro day. I'll agree with DBs who thought him tapping the football would give skilled DBs an opportunity to jump on his balls. Right? I'll agree that him tapping the football wasn't the best, but his accuracy was on target. Now, the team I'm looking at, because I'm expecting Shedeur to slide a little bit in the draft. People are talking about the Steelers. I think Shedeur would be excellent with the Steelers. Not that I think Shedeur would deliver his rookie year. Again, this is a league that roughed up. Just look at the numbers. Peyton Manning and Troy Aikman. Right, their rookie years. Understand, it takes quarterbacks time to learn the game. Not everyone is Dan Marino. Right, but in addition to the Steelers, whether or not the Steelers sign Aaron Rodgers, I'm looking at the team that picks number 11 because they haven't signed their starting quarterback yet. And that's the San Francisco 49ers. Understand the way the league is structured too. The biggest advantage you get in this rookie salary cap era is picking quarterbacks. Because you have quarterbacks like Dak Prescott, for example, making well over $50 million a year. Right? If I get a rookie on a rookie salary and that rookie actually pops, then I'm saving millions of dollars. Not only that, right? Let's say I sign Brock Purdy, who's been injured in the past. You remember he got injured in the NFC Championship game. Right? Not this last year, but I'm talking about years back. Right? Then a good rookie backup, who of course would be learning from, the 49er system, the 49er culture, Brock Purdy. Right? A good rookie quarterback could back him up. Right? Could learn a lot. Could give the team leverage. So that down the road, if Brock gets hurt or if Brock demands extra money because the Niners have further success, the league can say, hey, Brock, look, you string us out here, and we're just going to go with this backup. Right? No one's talking about it. I believe a lot of teams are BSing. Right? This is a league that's strategic. Teams look disinterested in players. Suddenly the phone rings on draft day. Right? I'm curious what the Niners do with pick number 11. I think Shedeur Sanders splits the public. There are those who wonder if he's a first-round pick. I've listened to Greg Cosell. Greg Cosell clearly believes Cam Ward is the first pick in the draft. Right? Greg Cosell is a bit of a quarterback guru type guy who breaks down film. Right? On the Ross Tucker show, by the way, another plug to another analyst whose work I appreciate. And let's just say there are those who believe Shedeur Sanders shouldn't be picked the first day. Then there are those who believe he is a great bargain if he slips out of the top 5. Right? I'm with that group. And I believe the Niners are so quarterback-centric. And if you look at the history of the team, right, Montana didn't have the best arm. Jeff Garcia didn't have the best arm. They did have a freak athlete at quarterback in Steve Young. He was a great athlete. He was blessed, but he was undersized for the position at the time. Right now, this is a Kyler Murray league. Now you have short guys playing quarterback. Back then, you didn't. Right? They had to get Steve Young from the USFL. Right? Now they have Brock Purdy. Last pick in the draft, the year he came out. And Brock Purdy, doesn't look like an athletic specimen. Right? That's the history of the team, where quarterback is really mental. And understand, you have an offensive guru, Kyle Shanahan, as head coach. You look at some of these Shedeur Sanders games, I know people are going to say his record wasn't that great at Colorado. Right? Let's be real here. You can only judge quarterbacks by what the offense does. Right? If your defense can't hold the opposition to less than 30 points, you could lose games. But not because of the offensive production. Right? If I'm an offensive guru like Kyle Shanahan is, and I'm involved in a protracted negotiation with my starting quarterback, I have to look at Shedeur Sanders. Right? Quite frankly, I couldn't care if the guy's coming across like a young Jordan. Right? He shows up, got Fort Knox around his neck. He's looking away from me as I talk. He's using phrases like my supporting cast and stuff like that. I have to look past the youth. And I have to ask myself, where is this guy going to be in 3 years? I like the upside on Shedeur Sanders. So let me just make a few other points, then I'm going to hop off here. Let's look around the league. Again, the past is prologue. Just understand, Russell Wilson, starting quarterback, made it to 2 Super Bowls, is a yard away from being 2-0 in Super Bowls. He was a third-round pick. Dak Prescott, he's one of the highest paid players in the game. Right? Has been to the playoffs many years. He was a 4th-round pick. Kirk Cousins, 4th-round pick. Jalen Hurts, 2 Super Bowl appearances, is the reigning champion, 2nd-round pick. Tom Brady's quarterback with the Raiders, who they went and got. They traded for him. In other words, you have not only a quarterback guru guy, this time owning part of the team, right? But you have one of the greats to ever play the quarterback position. And who did they go out and get? Pete Carroll's former quarterback. Pete Carroll's the head coach of the Raiders. Geno Smith, one of the highest completion percentages in the league. Geno Smith was a 2nd-round pick. right? Let me also make a few other points here. You go back through NFL history, you're going to see guys who weren't even drafted who are Hall of Famers at the position. Kurt Warner, right? Won a Super Bowl, went to others, undrafted. Hall of Famer, right? Venture away from the position. People like John Randall, undrafted, Hall of Famer. Great Raider, Willie Brown, wasn't always a Raider. Undrafted, gets cut by his first team, ends up with the Raiders. He's in the Hall of Fame. Right? So my point is, I'll be at the bar. Right? Guys like me will be at the bar, and we'll just be, enjoying the ambiance. We'll be hearing the crowd go, oh, when the team doesn't pick the pick they're certain is a future Hall of Famer and stuff like that. You're going to hear panic as if a guy has been diagnosed with cancer if he doesn't get picked in the first 15 picks. Right? The camera is going to focus on some guy in the green room who, is looking dejected because he didn't get picked number 10. Right? Just understand, for gamblers, this draft is going to have little bearing on who does well next year. Right? Sure. People can say, hey, what about Dan Marino? What about Jalen Daniels? Right? I mean, sure, there are exceptions to every rule. That's not life in the league. Right? If you've watched the league longer than 2 minutes, you know that's not life. Right? Again, go back and look at Peyton Manning's interceptions his first year, and then ask yourself, is this a guy who, after being picked first in the draft and after playing a year, is this a guy you would have predicted would be one of the very best quarterbacks of his era? Right? So, sure, someone can point out that Terry Bradshaw went first in the draft and won 4 Super Bowls. Okay, sure. There's always that guy. Until you realize that Bradshaw himself was challenged for the starting position by Gilliam. Right? Know your history. So don't get too carried away by this draft. Some team in this draft is going to pick someone in the later rounds. Right? Who's going to be a superstar? Who's going to be Terrell Davis or someone like that? Right? That's the history of the sport. As I look at this draft, let's just say, apart from Shedeur Sanders, I don't really see the quarterback who's a John Elway level talent. Right? I could easily be wrong. Because understand, Johnny Unitas went in the 8th or 9th rounds and then got cut. Right? This talent evaluation prediction game is far less than perfect. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.